All right, folks, welcome back to Top Comics Pressing. In this video, what we're going to do is try to give this Atomic Comics #1 a little bit of a facelift. So this is a really nice Golden Age book. It is from 1946, so if you can read that down there in the indicia. It does have the intro story here is actually from the co-creators of Superman, so that's pretty awesome to be able to get a little bit of their original work. This copy is a 0.5, and I think it's one of the nicest looking 0.5s you can find. It's a 0.5 because the center wraps here are missing, so you can see that on the interior. The center wrap here is blown, and if you count the pages, there's a couple of missing wraps, so that's pretty unfortunate. But all in all, this comic I think is going to look absolutely spectacular. This is actually a cover homage to Detective Comics #8. So, I would call it a cover ripoff because this is well before the days where people did that, as a homage or as a tribute. This is clearly just swiped. But nevertheless, I think that makes it kind of cool because it is such an early cover swipe, and because we do have the full story here from Siegel and Schuster, which is pretty awesome. And this one, was quite affordable because it's incomplete, so I was excited about that. And since I buy for eye appeal, we're gonna be able to fix this up. But no major pieces missing. The white is actually crazy bright, so if you open this on up, there's no evidence of what I would call true tanning in this book at all. And the pages, look, I think, spectacularly bright for a book from 46. So that's pretty awesome. Now, this book definitely needs some work, so we can go over what we're going to do here. There is just a lot of surface dirt that you can see in there. If you flip it on over, there is an amazing amount of surface dirt from back here and around on the back. And this book was clearly not pressed, so if you look particularly right in this area, you can see some of that distortion there, and there's a lot of those bends that are really creases, but they show up as some serious bends. So we're going to try to give that a little bit of a press. There might be a little bit of residual moisture damage right in here where my thumb is at. You can kind of see that. And one of the things that I think is probably the most distracting from the eye appeal of this book is you can see that it has a little bit of a spine roll. Now this one probably is from the manufacturer originally. At least it doesn't have most of our indications here. So it doesn't show a teardrop. It does not have massive reader creases. So this is probably stapled or folded crooked coming out of the original roller. But nevertheless, we can see that there is a lot of pages exposed, and the angle here matches, and so this thing is just twisted. And if we look, these staples do appear to be parallel, and they appear to be just on the left of that black border. And so I think that this comic actually could be flattened and refolded to make this a lot nicer looking. And with a solid clean and a press, I think we'll be able to make it really pop. This one's already quite sharp, although I do think that there is some light staining in here, and I think I found a little bit down here. Oh yeah, right in here, I think. So I might give this one 2 very light blue LED treatments, but I'm definitely not going to treat the interior. And yeah, so I'm going to go snap some pictures of this, and then I'll come on right back, and we'll get to the dry cleaning. All right, we're going to start our dry cleaning here with our standard method here with our click eraser, and I'm just going to go very gently over this dude's beard. Now, one thing I want to point out is the Golden Age books, depending on who published them, they have very different makes and feels, and this one does not feel like it has very much gloss. So, if you look at it, it does have a little bit of that sheen, but I'm going to assume for the most part that this paper is fully unprotected, and that means I'm going to have to be much more careful about what I go over so that I don't cause a whole bunch of color lift, because that would be very, very sad. And because the Golden Age was covered with so many different publishers, you got to really kind of inspect it and see what it feels like before you progress too much. But there's just so much surface dirt on this book, and I think it's really going to pop. I think it already pops. I know some people will cringe as soon as they find out the book is incomplete, but because it's the Golden Age book, you get, there's about 4 stories in there, and so, 3 of them are still good. And it's not like there's omnibuses of these kind of odd Golden Age titles, so they're pretty unique. Be very careful. This one's already kind of filed to a point, so I'm using that inside that O kind of very carefully top down. I'm going to try to avoid using my micro eraser because it is a little bit more abrasive and aggressive than the bigger eraser. There's just a lot of dirt here. But it is coming off, which is very exciting. Along that open edge, I'm gonna grab my backer board here and slide that under. So there's a vein of dirt right there, and it's about half off on the crinkle right now. So yeah, we're definitely making a difference here. The back interior pages have some dirt that I might try to treat, and the bottom spine front corner looks pretty gross too. So that one we might have to pull out an extra trick or two on. And normally with a book with this much dirt, I might be tempted to use my magic eraser sheet and use my Ouija method. On this book, I'm not going to risk it because I think the gloss is quite thin, and I don't want to cause any color rub. So I'd rather, especially because of how dark the cover is, there's a little bit of surface dirt in here. I might very, very gently try to touch up. I can see I'm not getting any red off, or if I am, it's very, very little. So it's important to not use any pressure when doing that. You're just going to let the eraser kind of slide across the surface. About it. You can see that there's a little bit of a stain in here, something had splattered and discolored the black. So nothing to do about that though. Alright, this spine is quite gross here along the edge. We're getting that. If you look at how dirty those eraser bits are, they are coming off, and you can see it on here too. So the trick is going to be not to rub into the black on the cover. Might as well get this big patch here first. A little bit of dirt off that A there. So much dirt. Now we're gonna have to take a break here in a minute too. So this one's definitely gonna be a two-parter dry clean. Maybe a three-parter. It's gonna be a lot. I'm gonna figure out how to do a fast action video so that y'all don't have to see this in real time. Although with YouTube you can fast forward quite a bit, so that's okay. Got a staple, I'm trying to be very careful. Don't want to put any strain or stress on that staple. You know, one thing also I'll mention is that this book didn't show any signs of brittleness. It doesn't mean it's not brittle or it's not going to have issues, but I did give a couple of the inner pages just a light roll through just to make sure on the corners, none of them, you know, that they had good flexibility. And the spine doesn't show any signs of spine splitting. I definitely would not suggest a spine roll correction or to fix this if it had signs of splits or big staple tape. Making our progress. So yeah, definitely want to check it for those spine splits, staple tears. Give it a good thorough inspection. Doesn't mean you'll always catch it. I have knocked pieces off of books before where there was a crease I didn't see, and you know, after I knock a piece off I can go see like, oh yeah, there was a big crease there, I shouldn't have been doing that. So it does happen. But I definitely want to try to keep it to a minimum by, you know, paying attention beforehand as much as possible. Here I'm kind of rubbing very carefully on the side. Look how much dirt that is. So this is a Zorbian sponge that I've cut down. And on the side here, I think I'm going to have to use that. It's not one of my favorite tools. I know some people really like these for surface dirt. I find them a little bit easier than I'd prefer to lift ink, but they are much better, I think, at really intense surface dirt. I got it in a big sponge, and then I just cut it with scissors down. Now this staple is a little bit more delicate, I think. You can see a little bit more stress on it, and so I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to not get as close or as vigorous on there as I am on the rest of the space. Really did want to get this corner, I think looks quite awful. I actually might take my magic eraser sheet on that corner. There's no color, so it should be okay. Getting a little bit of crud. I have it folded up into a nice tip there, so I can kind of line that up with the edge and just stroke down to make sure I'm not hitting any of that black ink. I think that's probably about as good as it's going to get. So. There you go. So hopefully, you know, some of that will end up on the sides. It looks a lot better. We got a bunch of dirt up here. You know, that's a little speck of ink. This is a little bit of light foxing. That's staining or foxing. I don't think that'll come off. Yeah, it's gonna be there. So I think that's gonna be about it for the front. Go ahead and give the back here a little bit of a polish. This is definitely the most disgusting spot right across the rear spine, and there's a good amount of creasing. So you do want to be careful here. Again, I'm not putting pressure downward, I'm rubbing the eraser sideways. Kind of go to a slight swirl pattern here and make sure I'm not building up lines in any given spot. section here. I'll give this just a getting a lot of crud off. You can see it in the eraser shavings. You can also see the mountain of eraser shavings. The bottom corner is definitely one of the grossest spots on the comic. A lot of surface dirt. Now, one thing I did notice was on the interior here, there was some fingerprinting. So let's see if we can get that off. Actually, looks pretty good. I'm going to take the magic eraser sheet here and just slide across the open edges. There's a good amount of dirt on the edge of the pages. You would not want to do this if the pages showed any brittleness or, you know, if you had concerns about their quality. But these look to be really nice pages. Yeah, there we go. We got that fingerprint off there. It was right there. So that's pretty solid. Okay. Keep going here. But generally just our same pattern, nothing too crazy here. We're just, again, going to follow the spine edge of the open edge. I skipped the bottom there and we'll come back for that. It's definitely pokey. Just go over real light here, this wonderful lady playing the piano. All right. Now, there are some spots here we want to touch up. So right here in this forearm, let's see if there's a good amount of dirt. Clean that fouling off my eraser. I'm going to use the micro eraser here very carefully. Make sure it's clean. Just rubbing more than I wanted to on the black with the full eraser, so we're just going to end up, you can see in the musical notes here, there's another swish of grossness, so we'll see what we can get there. Goes all the way down to here. Corners. This one does have a crease through it, so I'll be very careful. Normally I use the magic eraser sheet, but on this ear I'm going to be a little bit more gentle. I'm just going to have to be very careful, and I'm going to leave some of the darkness on that corner. Just lightening up quite a bit just with the dry clean. Just getting all that surface dirt off of it. Looks like really intense surface dirt. I'm gonna fold that in my maybe all we can get there. Yeah, it's gonna be stubborn. Whatever that dirt is there to stay. Don't get greedy. Don't get greedy. Win some, you lose some, you gotta leave some sometimes. So much crud. This one's gonna be another pause point here for me. So if you get tired on books like this, or if you feel yourself losing attention span, or if you get a little frustrated, you can't get the last little goobies, it's time to take a break. So I think after this top edge here, I'm gonna time out. Yep. Some of this I think is true staining. You can see it especially in here. Definitely a little bit of cola or something. A little bit of corroded paper or surface crud. So that's on over here. Alright, time. I'll be back in a little bit. Alright, took a few minute break there. Cleaned up the area. So if you noticed before, there was just eraser bits everywhere. So, after a little bit, it's time to clean that up. And we're just going to keep on going here with the dry clean. Going to go right down the spine here. And we did the front along the spine. It's definitely getting a bunch of crud. Just see how dark the eraser bits are coming off. But this thing's getting brightened up and whitened up just by virtue of removing dirt and grime. Just magic right before my very own eyes. Just amazing how much dirt there is coated on this thing. As you can see, it's not a quick process when there's this much dirt involved. Especially not on a delicate old book like this. It's not fragile, it's not brittle, but definitely not one that you want to rush. Any dirty bits. Alright, I'm just going to go right down the text here, kind of how we always do, very lightly. Gonna have fun telling people I have a blank comics #1 Golden Age key issue with a key story from Simon and Schuster. We'll see what people think. It's obviously a setup for Action Comics 1, right? So Atomic Comics, Action Comics, both key #1 issues. Siegel and Schuster, obviously the co-creators of Superman. Definitely think somebody sprayed a Coke on this at some point. words, but we're going to do a perpendicular, hoping to hit whatever I might have missed before. And I'm going to go in with the micro eraser here now on some of these spots that I see that I think I can touch up. I think that might be about a wrap. So I think we've gotten as much as we can off of here. I'm just shake to knock off as many pieces as possible so I don't rub them in. Again, I'm grabbing the comic several inches in here from the edge. Carefully balanced, kind of mid-book. Shake off my eraser sheet. All right. Looks better. Not perfect, but it looks a lot better. A little disappointed I can't get a little bit more of this stuff off, but it's kind of how it goes. So you can see where there's clearly staining that was hiding under the dirt there, and there's some more down here. So that's light cover staining. I don't think it penetrates to the interior, at least not significantly. So, don't think so. Just great page quality over that. Oh, there's another fingerprint. It's like the one we got off. We'll leave that one. Just really good, nice to look at. Okay. This is from the cover. Pretty awesome. All right, I'm gonna come on back here and we're gonna try to flatten the spine out and see what we can do with this splayed comic. All right, I'm all set up here with my tacking iron. Got that set just above, at 200 degrees-ish. So I'm actually going to turn that down a little bit. That should be pretty good. Got my squirt bottle here with water so I can wet cotton rounds. These are just the regular old Up and Up basic SRP paper to put the comic on so that if I'm moving around, I'm not going to put a lot of stress or risk scratching it, although the MDF board here is already quite smooth. And then I've got my Up and Up brand kitchen parchment paper here that is kind of a water permeable bit. Now, one of the big risks of doing this is to detach a centerfold. But since that's already the case, and since we're already missing the actual true centerfold, I'm a little bit less worried about it. So what I'm going to do is get this pretty wet, put that over our parchment paper here, and then we're just going to start applying a bunch of humidity. And I don't want this cotton round to be dripping wet, but I do want it to transfer a good amount of humidity, and we're just going to gently work those pages flat. I want to be mindful where those staples are so that we don't put a ton of pressure on the staples. Obviously, we could make this worse by detaching the cover, so we're going to try not to do that. I need to untwist my irons cord. Go. So again, not a lot of force. You're going to let the heat and humidity do your work for you here. It's definitely warm. Good news about the staple being popped out of the centerfold, though, is we can kind of glide over it without having to hit that bump on the staple. Just don't want to put any downward force on the staple. Don't want to stress it on the cover side. And again, I like flattening from the interior out because I think the inner wraps are slightly more permeable to humidity and moisture. And I think they're just more likely to relax the fiber. And I think that's mostly because there isn't that same, gloss, although on this one I already confessed because it's a Golden Age book, it doesn't have the kind of gloss you'd be familiar with if you've dealt with Silver Age books or Bronze or Copper Age books. And the gloss quality is quite different on Silver Age books than it is on Bronze and Copper. At least from what I can tell from Marvel books, there's a big change from about 1963 to 1968 or 9, and then it feels like about 1974 there's another changeover about 1978 or 1979. Don't know if that's true or not, but at least from working on books of all those ages, you know, once you get to 1978-ish, 9-ish, somewhere in there, it's pretty consistent through the late 80s and early 90s. Changes again somewhere about 94. All of a sudden the grade of the books changes. I guess some of the thinner Marvel books from the early 90s, like Spider-Man Torment #1 and the second She-Hulk series with the pink cover, those tend to be a little bit narrower. It's flattening out quite nice. It's actually kind of convenient to be 2 wraps shy. Means that there's less pages to have to work through. Golden Age books typically have, quote, 52 pages, but that 52 pages is from an era where you could count both the exterior and the interior cover. Each is their own separate page, which of course is slightly disingenuous, so at some point somebody corrected that. So there's only 48 interior pages, and if you divide that by 2 to get the number of, because that counts both front and back, so you get to 48 would be 24, and then divide that again, that would be 12 sheets of paper. So this book missing 2 full of those sheets of paper is, you know, pretty incomplete. Definitely more incomplete than just a coupon cutout. But you'd expect 12 sheets of paper, and this one's only got 10. And we're just gently, you know, rehumidifying and working that steam on through there. And pages certainly are flattening out. There's definitely much less of a ridge. Probably do one more here on the interior, and then we'll have to be very careful doing one on the exterior. We use a lot less humidity, and I'm going to turn down the iron for that. It's probably too much moisture. Mop some of that back up. But the nice thing is this one only has the King Arthur story incomplete. So the first story by Siegel and Schuster is complete. The cover one of the Mandarin is complete. And there's another one in here that I forgot what it was when I flipped through it that is also complete. So 3 out of 4 ain't bad. Plus I can get stories of King Arthur anywhere. Alright, so that's pretty well flattened out. I can see that there's maybe a little bit of memory in there around the staples, which is okay. We're gonna have to live with that. I'm just gonna slide this off the edge there so that I can grab it and give it a flip on over. Like that. And I'm only gonna go once down the exterior here. I'm gonna do that, you know, like I said, with a much lower temperature. So I'm gonna dial that back to 1.5-ish there. Because the iron is already hot, I'm going to cool it by hitting it on this cotton round. You might not have noticed it, but I did move it to a new part of the kitchen parchment so that if there are any micro creases or anything in there. Enthalpy of vaporization for water is quite high, so it's a good thing to cool the cotton round down on, or cool the iron down on, so it helps me squeeze out a little bit of bonus humidity here. All right, so I got a staple right here and a staple right there, so I'm gonna go above the staple. Below the staple. Between the staples. Get a good musty smell coming off of it. It means it's working. Too bad I can't translate smells for you all. By the way, CGC grading book overlooks smells. They have a whole section in the grading book explaining why they don't grade smells. So if you're worried about a slight basement must odor on your comic book, should be all right. Okay, so there we have that. I'm gonna slide it down again here and pick it on up with the centerfold. I'm gonna take my backing board here, and we're going to use this to create a new fold. Now, because these pages are loose, it's going to be a little bit more challenging, so we're going to want to make sure we kind of line those up as good as we can. And I'm going to try to line up the staples as good as we can. So I'm just going to kind of slide that in there. We're just going to kind of try to figure out where we want these staples to go. Give it a little bit of a twist. Obviously, this is really, really dicey. If you have any, spine split, you're just going to shred the spine doing this. So it's one thing you want to check over really good before you even get started with this. But this now looks pretty good. So, I'm kind of happy with that placement. It's not going to be, super duper perfect, but, it was pretty bad before. So we can see there where the pages are kind of lined up. Let's just check and make sure the back isn't too bad. It's pretty common to see some exposed wrap on the back, so that's not anything crazy. Unfortunately, I keep sliding the backer board here. So yeah, I think that that's going to be about where we're going to go. I'm going to re-dampen this real quick. Make sure we got enough humidity on it. And this one's got a whole bunch of wrinkle you can see to it, and if it were a really trashed bronze or copper age book, I'd probably be okay with that, but we're gonna grab some fresh stuff here with a nice golden age book. This, by the way, is the brand that we got going on. And adjust that up just a hair. Trying to make sure I got enough to cover everything. Ta-da. Okay, that's ready. Just eyeball this one more time there. Okay, I'm going to do my best to keep my right hand fixed on it so that there's always downward pressure so stuff doesn't shift too bad. Because that can be disappointing if you remake that fold and then you let go of it and you're like, oh shoot, it was crooked. Kind of sad face. So trying to avoid sad face moments. First, I'm getting to the end of the roll, so that's a little bit annoying. We will proceed here with a fold, and I'm going to try to do 2 on the front and then 2 on the back, and then I'll come back and do 1 more on the front and 1 more on the back. So I'm going to do this 3 times to try to make sure that that fold sticks. Just going to slide that over a little bit. You can see all that wrinkling and creasing in there. That's just from the parchment expanding and contracting when you heat it. And when you get some moisture into it, obviously it loosens up those fibers. Just trying to transfer some humidity down. You can see it even wrinkling up just as it absorbs all that humidity. Just okay. All right. There's two there. And it's looking pretty good. That top staple's sideways, bottom staple's sideways. Looking pretty good overall. You see any actual droplets of water, you want to kind of spread those out and disperse them. You don't want the iron hitting a true drop of water. It's going to generate way too much humidity and steam locally. By the way, this is a full back backer board, so you might ask why I'm going over the staples. I did use a full back backer board so that it adds extra thickness there where the staples are, and so hopefully that slightly exaggerated thickness from the full back board is giving me enough space where I'm not directly putting pressure on the staple. There's two on the back. You know, we got a little bit of unevenness up here, but I think that might just be one wrap. This corner definitely looks pretty good. That corner looks pretty good. Let's flip back on over. Still looking pretty good up there. Still looking pretty good up there. We'll do one more on both covers. That'll be it for the front. One more here on the back. And call it a day. I think this thing is going to get 2 blue LED treatments on the front and 2 LED treatments on the back. So. And I'm only going to do the exteriors, and I'm going to use my more dilute 1.5% hydrogen peroxide. I actually would prefer to not whiten it at all, but I am going to hope that that helps just mitigate some of the darkness from the staining. Don't need it to go away altogether. I just want it to pick up a little bit of eye appeal. Obviously at a 0.5 technical grade, the little bit of residual staining is who cares. So, at least from a grade perspective. I obviously care. I wouldn't try to remove it or lighten it. All right, now with the backer board slid out here, now that we've got our nice crease, I'm gonna try to give it one like slightly tighter sink down above the staple, below the staple, and between the staple. And just because it's not colored, I'm gonna do that on the back cover. just want to make sure I know about where the staples are. So one is right here by practicing, and the other one is kind of right by the piano in the songbook. So. Alright, so piano and songbook. And the goal of doing this is to try to make that crease a little bit harder. So on this pass, I actually am applying some pressure. Not a lot, not Hulk smash pressure, but a little bit. All right, that'll do it. Be back here in a few minutes with some blue LED results. All right, folks, here we are with this copy of Atomic Comics #1. So I ended up actually only doing one treatment here on the front cover. This already looks bright enough. I just didn't want to push it anymore. You know, that white is really beautiful for being from the 1940s. And I flip it on over, and this already looks touched up. I did two here on the back, and I tried to get some of that light staining up here, you know, and a little bit more down here. And it didn't really improve a whole lot between the first and the second treatment, and I really don't see a reason to push it any further. You know, it's quite bright. It never really was that discolored in any way. And, you know, it's just a really nice book. Unfortunately, it's missing those two wraps, but, you know, what are you going to do there? So this thing's now going to go in the press. With any Golden Age book, and by the way, you can see this one kind of curled up there from the moisture exposure on that cover, so we're going to need to make sure we flatten that back down. But for any Golden Age book, I always assume that they are slightly dried out, and because they tend to be thicker books as well, I give these kind of 2 rounds of hydration. One where the front cover is up, and then the other one where the back cover is up, just to make sure. And sometimes I prop the pages open to make sure that you can get some humidity on the interior there. You obviously don't want to open this all the way up because you'll stress the spines, and particularly on old Golden Age books that might have either fragile spines or partial spine splits. That's a really bad idea. But we do want to get a good amount of humidity in this thing and give it a full-on press, partially to make sure that that reset spine here stays kind of where we want it to be, and so it still looks a lot better. And so we'll take a peek at this after the press. I'm going to do the, you know, kind of double hydration, then I'm going to cook it at 155 degrees with the standard kind of 15-minute press. I'm going to put a magazine backer board at the centerfold, kind of how I normally will, and this one has pretty secure staples, so I'm going to go ahead and do my typical cardstock under the front and the back cover on this one. All right, everybody, I wanted to give us one final look here at this copy of Action Comics #1 we've been working on. A lot of that light bending in this area particularly, it looks a lot better. So I'll take some before and after pictures. You know, in general, I think the reds in this comic pop a little bit brighter, even though we only gave it the one blue LED treatment. The back cover cleaned up a lot, not quite as much as I was hoping for, and I did feel somewhere in here, see if I can find it, I think I caused a little bit of surface damage to the paper fibers right here by maybe being a little too aggressive. So, you know, that's maybe a little lesson. You know, you can go too far with dry cleaning. You can be a little too vigorous with that. So all in all, though, this one, including that spine roll, looks fantastic. And so this one being a 0.5 copy, I don't think is worth sending to CGC. What I'm going to do instead is throw it up on my display wall in a top loader. And so what I'm going to do for that is this is a full back board from Gerber. This is their kind of current size, which is significantly smaller than a Golden Age book. And I'm going to use that in here to help support it. And then I'm going to have my Golden Age bag-in board right here. And I'm just going to slide this on in. And now I've got 2 full back boards in there, and that one at the centerfold hopefully will act as a little bit of an acid base absorber, or an acid vapor absorber as well. Gerber claims that these boards are basified, and so hopefully that'll help out. So, and I really like having, as you know, a second support there, particularly for older books or mega keys. And so this one I think looks really nice in that Golden Age bag and board. Might have been able to squeeze it into a Silver Age one looking at the border, but not really a point in trying to force it. So there we go. This is a much nicer, sharper looking copy, although incomplete, of Action Comics, or Atomic Comics #1.